Go to the library now.
Hello, sweetie.
Oh, hello. Sorry to burst in on you like this. Okay, if we stop here for a bit. Hold to open.
Yes, and what do you do? Ooh, life of a time traveller. Never knew it could be such hard work.
Here! Come!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, a Doctor Who podcast that is taking on the entire series in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and we are a couple of journalists who write about Doctor Who, have written about Doctor Who, love Doctor Who, rewatch Doctor Who like crazy. And I don't know about you, Pete, but the show actually helps tamp down my Doctor Who rewatching. It kind of just, one a week or one story a week is kind of less on average, I'd say, that I'd normally be doing. So there are often times where I might say like, oh, I want to go watch the 11th hour. I'm like, no, save it for the pod.
You know, I hear that, and I have supplemented my week with Big Finish.
Ooh.
That's a thing I do. I've actually begun really going through the 8th Doctor adventures. Like, I kind of did a few random ones back in the day, and I had started some of the Lucy Miller stuff, which was a little more recent, and then I was like, you know what? I got to go back to the beginning, start with all the stuff with the Charlie. His other, and basically he names all the companions in Night of the Doctor. It's great.
They're all canon. They're all canon.
Yeah, so it's great. It's a great thing to listen to when you're chopping some vegetables, or perhaps going for a run, or many other things you might do in the course of a week. Fighting off some killer shadows. Have those AirPods in and listening to some adventures.
Indeed, Pete. Spoilers. Sorry. Yeah, we haven't yet revealed. Not like you've looked at the podcast now to see which episode we're covering. We haven't yet revealed it. But yeah, I would love to. We talked about this in the past. Speaking of Big Finish, I'm very intimidated by the size of the Big Finish canon, as I think a lot of listeners probably are. And I would love like a top 10 list of here are the adventures you should listen to. Because I want the quality stuff. Because I know that Big Finish, love it, hate it. It does vary a little bit in quality across the writing because there's just so much of it.
Official fan request, everyone.
Yes.
Let's get a top 10 list to Chris of the best Big Finish. I haven't. My knowledge of Big Finish is not nearly comprehensive enough that I'd be confident in my choices. I've definitely listened to more than 10, but I'd probably give you a top 5. That's probably all I could.
That's great.
Yeah, but I could do it. But we need someone who's listened to them all.
I'm just sort of like our episode today. I'm laying down a marker that will bear fruit, many years in the future.
Cool. So hit us up at Pull to Open 63 on Twitter or Instagram, or Pull to Open podcast at gmail.com if you would like to send it that way, or you could go to our most popular and engaged social platform, TikTok, and want to send us a video reply to one of our videos, and that you can find them all at Pull to Open, just that, Pull to Open on TikTok, which, by the way, has been growing very, 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 very quickly.
Yes, indeed. Doing closing time really sort of helped us take off in our number of followers, I believe. We got 400.
Yeah, and we got it's really starting to blow up. We're getting closing in on 4,000 total.
Wow.
And what I'm learning is that there's a lot of love for Matt Smith and his doctor, and there was a lot to love about Matt Smith,
as we like to call him.
Very apt, actually. Freudian slip there, but. Yeah, there was a lot to praise about his performance and the things about his doctor. It was actually a really interesting episode with respect to the Matt Smith doctor. It's very unusual for him, and there's that whole 200-year gap, which we went over the last podcast. But people had a lot to say and a lot of praise for him. Even some people, a lot of people is his favorite doctor, their favorite doctor, the doctor they started with, which I find is. I'm always constantly reminded that a whole generation of people has been brought up on NuWho. Who think of Eggleston, Tennant, and Matt Smith as their doctors, and TikTok is a great place that I'm constantly reminded of that because I keep wanting to celebrate it.
Indeed. I mean, it's still wild to me that my wife thinks of Sylvester McCoy as her doctor, as a Tom Baker guy. But it's always your first doctor. You love your first doctor. And really the TikTok that entered kind of our top 10 all time from Closing Time was the one talking about Matt Smith's range as an actor, right? Just the sadness and the joy that he shows in this episode.
He could go from one end of the spectrum to the other so quickly and so convincingly. Probably, again, like your favorite doctor, like Tom Baker, was also very good at that. Zany, fun, could instantly turn on the seriousness, and you would 100% believe it.
Yeah, he was certainly Mad Baker, as we like to call him.
I'm envisioning some very, very weird cupcakes right now.
I love it. All right. Well, let's
get on to the business, though. We've talked about the socials, which is always good, but we also need to talk about reviews. Everybody listening, this is a podcast, as you know, and podcasts thrive on your feedback, your reviews, wherever you're listening to us, be it Apple, Spotify, Breaker. There's a million that aren't popping into my head right now, but there's a lot of podcast services. Most of them offer the opportunity to leave a review. Please leave a review. It really helps the podcast. We really want to get to 50 reviews across all our platforms. So we would love to read your review out on air. But they really, really do help us get visible in the podcast apps you're on and really expose the pod to more and more people. So please pause the playback, leave a rating, leave a 1-star, leave a 2-word review like, great job. That's fine. We'll read that.
I want you to get up from your couch right now, go to the window, open it, and leave us a review. Yeah, last time I said leave us a thumbs up emoji. I think be a little cleverer with your emoji review and just leave us a scarf, maybe.
Oh wow, nice. Yeah, or some and then stars. I don't know, rocket ship.
We need to lobby the International Emoji Council, for there is such a thing, for first of all, a little TARDIS, obviously. Secondly, I think maybe a Fez. Fez would be a great addition. Yeah.
We will even allow the Vulcan salute, and we'll count that on our Star Trek reference counter. That's up to about 7 now or so.
Yeah, I cannot believe we need equity in the geek world. I cannot believe that there is a Vulcan salute emoji and there is nothing for Star Wars. There's nothing for Doctor Who. I mean, come on. Representation, guys. Representation matters.
Totally.
Anyway, not just Vulcans. All right, let's get into it.
To business, yes. So,
previously on Pull to Open, we were in the forest of the night.
Right.
Crap, I revealed it too early. Spoilers, damn it.
We can fix that in post. For some reason, I feel like I don't want to.
So from the Forest of the Night, which was a very kind of episode, I think we both felt kind of about it.
It's one you kind of like to on, though, so, for whatever that's worth.
It's always fun to even on meh Doctor Who. It really is. And that's the joy of the show. So we went to literally the only other story in the history of Doctor Who that has the name Forest in it, the Forest of the Dead, which almost wasn't called that, and of course the preceding episode, the Makeup One story, Silence in the Library.
Even before silence fell.
Indeed,
first silence of first relevant silence of the NuWho.
You know, if they ever reshoot Silence in the Library, and I let's get into this now. I think they should, because the video quality is not great, right? It was not the 4K era. So I think we need to get David Tennant, Catherine Tate, and Alex Kingston back stat to shoot this in 4K. And I think that they should digitally insert some actual silence in the library, reading the books, just occasionally in the background.
Silence in the Library. I love it. Good times. I'm sure someone's done some fan art that is exactly what you're talking about. So feel free to link that to one of the socials too. But yes, we went from forest to forest.
And we've gone from one of the most meh episodes to one that I think every Whovian agrees is a classic.
Yeah.
Would you say it's
one of the new classics?
Yeah.
I will get into it, but yeah, like I was struck about how much this is just a beautifully constructed story. But let's speaking of the story, Chris.
Crap.
And we really need to first establish the story
Did you like my stalling?
It was pretty good, but it's inevitable. We come here all the time. You cannot escape this. Time can't be rewritten here. This is TLDW, or it's about to be. This is our regular segment. Too long, Doctor Who. Too long, didn't watch. And we are going to summarize the entire story of Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead in record time. Now, we give 1 minute for every episode of the new series. Mm-hmm. So you actually have a full 2 minutes to summarize this story.
I'm feeling somewhat confident given that sort of like I feel particularly the second episode should be easy to summarize, but as soon as I say that, I'm like thinking, no, probably not.
I think you got a challenge here, my friend. There's some twists and turns, and the second episode, there's some radical changes in what's going on. So, but you do have some room to stretch, just not so much as say when we did the Green Death.
All right, I'm ready. All right. My tabs are all closed because we do this live without a net. I only get one shot.
Yep, 2 minutes, and they'd better not be that silent. All right, we're gonna start this in 3. Oh wait, no, have you closed all your windows? You can't
all my windows.
Anything. You got it all. All right,
I'm just looking at the TARDIS on my desktop.
There are no notes. All from memory. It's going to happen in 3, 2, 1, go.
So the Doctor and Donna land on a planet that's an entire library in the 51st century, and they see that the library's empty. It's no survivors, but 4,000 people are missing, and the Doctor was summoned there by a mysterious note on his psychic paper with a kiss, and they discover also in the library there's a team of archaeologists who somehow got in, and they start being eaten by the Vashta Nerada, which is a race that lives in shadows, and they're basically like piranhas. And the Doctor seems to have a connection with one of the archaeologists, Professor River Song. He doesn't know what it is, but she certainly knows him. Anyway, the Vashta Nerada are eating people, getting into their suits, which have this sort of memory loop in them. And, and the climax of the first episode, the Doctor and River and the remaining archaeologists are fleeing the Vashta Nerada, who have inhabited Dave, who's saying, who turn out the lights. Meanwhile, Donna, instead of getting transported back to the TARDIS, is inserted into the computer in the library where Dr. Moon meets her, and she fast forwards through a life, a married life with a guy named Lee and a couple of kids. But slowly she realizes this isn't real with the help of Miss Evangelista, who was one of the other archaeologist people who was eaten already and inserted into the computer. And the Doctor realizes that there's a whole bunch of people in the library stuck, saved in the computer, and he gets them out, but he has to boost the energy. And there's a problem with Vashta Nerada, so he has to, jump in and sort of sacrifice himself. But at the last minute, River says, no, this is my job. Spoilers, you're going to remember me. And she basically reveals that she knows his name, or that's what we assumed she whispers. Anyway, she dies. All the people come back. The Doctor and Donna leave just before we see that Lee was actually one of the people who was stuck, one of the 4,000 people who was stuck and returned from the library. Meanwhile, River is in the computer library.
Whoa! Nice. You got it.
Oh,
well done, sir.
Oh, I need a breather.
That was a tough one. Yeah, it's a little twistier at the end than you think.
It really is. I didn't know I was going to get to the coda of River being stuck in the computer.
The unexpected coda. I got to say, it's one of the few times that you really are fooled into thinking it's over. And I knew it wasn't the second time, but I remember as I was watching it, I remember feeling like thinking it was done. And then there's that great little voiceover with Alex Kingston and David Tennant. You see him running back at the end of that voiceover, and it's like, boom, and it's like, oh wow, and it sort of ends on a much higher note than otherwise would have.
It does, and I'd totally forgotten that before this rewatch. I'd forgotten that River ends up in the computer for all eternity. Which might be nice. How did I forget? I don't know. There's a lot of Doctor Who. There's a lot to keep in your brain at one time. But yeah, no, I just sort of thought that I remembered that was River's death. That's my shorthand for Silence in the Library. Forest of the Night.
I will say the death hits harder, and everything else hits harder. And the sort of final coda where she's in the computer, you're like, oh, okay, that's better. I mean, she's not resurrected perfectly, and I think because of that, it doesn't quite stick with you like that fantastic zoom in shot on David Tennant with him in the handcuff at the end there, and he's just so distraught and sad that this happened because this person clearly meant so much. Like, it's such an interesting feeling. You really get in the head of the character there. Like, he cares so much for any innocent, but he knows he should care more here, and he does, but he doesn't have that depth that she had with him. So the
it
loss
stuns
is very,
him.
it's just you're just lost in a sense.
It stuns him into silence in the library, and it kind of makes an interesting pair with the next episode chronologically, which we've already been to, which is Midnight, which is another story in which Ten is stunned into silence.
Yeah.
Basically, his voice literally taken away from him by the creature on the Crusader bus.
Well, if you think about it, that what happens in that episode, this isn't quite the perfect mirror, because I know they sort of wrote Midnight to be more of a mirror to Voyage of the Damned. But this one is similarly constructed in that the Doctor comes in and sort of takes command. These sort of hapless people, except for River, are in these spacesuits, and they do pretty quickly start deferring to him. Even the jerk person, the jerkwad dude who is trying to get them to sign contracts, and it seems like this profiteer. But again, there's a neat little twist that I actually forgot about this.
Yes,
that he actually turns out to be kind of an okay guy.
Yeah, Strachman Lux, played by Steve Pemberton, who's the third of the, I guess chronologically, the second of the League of Gentlemen comedy troupe to appear. He was with Reese Shearsmith and, oh God, why am I blanking on his name? Co-wrote Sherlock.
Oh, Reese Shearsmith. He was from Sleep No More.
Yes. Yeah, so he's in Sleep No More.
Sorry, I'm not a League of Gentlemen aficionado. I'm going to let you.
It's a very British name, but then also, oh God, I'm so embarrassed that I'm blanking on his name. He was nearly a showrunner. He is a showrunner of Sherlock. Help me out, Pete.
We'll fix this in post. We'll call him Watson.
I'm sorry. Let me stall for time while I remember his name by telling you that we're about to talk about the last scene ever in Doctor Who, which is a very exciting discovery that was made recently.
Well, this is sort of some background stuff. So you're talking about Dr. Moon, right? Which I thought was interesting, and it's one of these things that's you almost the dialogue you don't quite catch it, right? In that they call it. The dude says Lux. We just said his name. I forgot his first name now, but he says it's a Dr. Moon. It's not a real moon. It's like an antivirus program that sort of protects the hard drive, and that's all good. But you're kind of like, well, wait, why would you call it Doctor? Because I mean, I get it, the thing, but it's like as a choice in the show, it's weird because it's a little confusing for the viewer because now you have to kind of like sort out. They're talking about the moon, Dr. Moon, not the Doctor. So why even introduce that weird variable? And the answer is...
It turns out there's an answer. By the way, Mark Gatiss is the answer to the previous question. I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry.
We love
Mark. Such an integral part of NuWho, and I totally forgot his name.
We love him, even though we don't love all of his work. We do love him. He's a great dude.
Yes, and we've talked about it before. We shall talk about it again. But yes, in 2020, new information was revealed about Science in the Library by Russell T Davies and Steven Moffat, who interviewed each other in Doctor Who magazine. By the way, can I just say that the friendship between Moffat and Davies is first of all, it's a very real thing. Secondly, it's one of those things that sustains you and keeps you going, or me, certainly as a Who fan, through the pandemic, is their friendship on Instagram. Like anytime one of them posts on Instagram, I have to go into the comments because I know the other one will have commented first, and there'll be some hilarious comedy back and forth. They have such a great patter, and it was such a good idea in 2020 when Doctor Who magazine got them to interview each other. And I'm just to capture the enormity of what they discussed, and the full context for it, and the fact that you understand this isn't something that's planned for the series. It's only Steven Moffat's headcanon.
Right.
Let me just read out the entire extract. So Russell says to Steven, "I've thought about this for years. When we were making Silence in the Library, you once told me the very last scene ever of Doctor Who. Does it still stand?" Steven responds, "No memory of this. Went back through my emails and found it. This is from when we were shooting those shows." And here's the quote from the email. "In my head, and only in my head, this will probably never appear on screen or be confirmed in any way, River's not just his wife, she's his widow. Somewhere in the terrible future, on a battlefield, the 45th Doctor dies in her arms and makes her the same promise she once made him. It's not over for you. You'll see me again." So River buries her husband, and off she goes to have lots of adventures with his younger selves and confuse the hell out of them. Until, of course, she ends up in the data core of the library planet, realizes she'll never see him again, and then she starts to wonder why anyone would call a moon Doctor. And then present day Stephen adds, "Yeah, some version of that could still work. The Doctor worrying she'll get lonely inside the library and popping his dying mind inside a moon." God, look at those words. I actually typed those words. And Russell says, "I can't believe you didn't remember. I've never forgotten that Dr. Moon thing. It's so clever. Every time I watch that story, I think it's him, it's the Doctor, and no one knows." So, Colin Salmon, who plays Dr. Moon, is the Doctor.
This is like
sort of.
I didn't read this interview. This is new information for me, and it's blowing my mind. I mean, like, okay, so we got to talk about this. So, like, he's the Doctor. Like, he's so doctory, you know what I mean? Like, it makes sense.
He kind of
like,
is.
I really like that he's this reassuring, calming thing for a child.
Yes,
which makes total sense. And then the one of the best bits. I mean, there's so many neat little twists in this whole thing. But when he gets alone with the little girl and is like, actually, this is not real, and the library's real, which of course, as viewers, we all know. But like, that's when Dr. Moon really like wins you over. You sort of think, oh wow,
he's actually a nice guy.
He's a good guy. Yeah, he's not like keeping her docile and fooled. He really wants to help and get her back in reality. So and again, very doctorish thing. Like, it's winning you over. I like this.
Yeah, it's interesting because it does posit a sort of more calm, relaxed final version of the Doctor, if that's him.
Right, he's seen it all by then.
Yeah, exactly. 45. He's kind of lost his kind of childish spark at that point, but he's still reassuring to children. I think that's a sort of a nice way for the Doctor to end up, maybe. I don't know. We do have to talk about what he does to Donna, because it basically, you get the sense that he's somewhat complicit in this sort of the fake life that Donna lives.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably like it's a very I wouldn't say it. It's a very well executed thread when Donna is sort of living her fake life in the library hard drive, and it's sort of bit by bit slowly aligns and reveals the whole plot of the story of this everyone being saved in the hard drive, and it's not perfect because there's simply not enough space to simulate all of this. So I will say that plot line sort of is emotionally satisfying. It's never quite as satisfying as I like, because Donna really doesn't do anything once she realizes that the illusion, it's an illusion. She just kind of waits for it to break down and tries her best to kind of hang on to the things that she thinks matter to her.
Have you watched WandaVision?
Yes.
It's very WandaVision, isn't it? That the scene with her with the kids in bed. Very much so. I do wonder if WandaVision, which obviously came much later, was in any way inspired by that scene.
Yeah. I don't know. And then when Dr. Moon, I sort of remember I feel like that's almost like the Dr. Moon default is that he has to make sure people are fully integrated immediately, or they maybe they just end up failing, like to preserve sort of the entire illusion. He can't have it's almost like the Matrix, right? Like if you're too rebellious, you just like get shut down, or it shuts down the whole thing. And then but conversely, the little girl, who's obviously the center of it all and is the computer, is the one who really does need to know that this is there's a reality beyond this one that she needs to take an active part in fixing. So I guess I would justify it that way, and why Dr. Moon sort of does an about face in part 2, again, to sort of his quote unquote evil ways.
Well, it's also interesting in part 2 that there's a moment where Dr. Moon disappears and is replaced by the Doctor,
right?
A hologram of the Doctor, and then tries to cover it up with he says something like, Mrs. Smith's pie or whatever. When will I ever learn?
Right.
So that's a bit weird that he's kind of gaslighting Donna about appearing as himself if he is the Doctor, or if he was thought of as a future Doctor in this writing process. But anyway, I think this leads me into something I want to say, maybe a little controversial, but I think that on a rewatch, I like Forest of the Dead better than Silence in the Library. And
explain.
It is because of the power of that. Because the two stories, on paper, it shouldn't work, right? How much Moffat is mashing into this. There's so many elements to it. There's River Song. There's the archaeologists in general, the archaeologist group in general. The Vashta Nerada. We talk about whether or not they work. There's Cal sitting inside the computer. There's the library itself as a concept. All of this stuff being mashed together and squeezed into 2 episodes. And we know that we know now from bitter experience, when Moffat does this, it doesn't always work.
Right.
He gets too Moffat-y, we call it. He's become a verb, as or an adjective, I guess, to Moffat about. And but here it totally works. It totally works.
Yeah.
And you could lose maybe one of these elements. We can talk about which one that is, but it wouldn't quite work as the whole. But one of the elements that really spoke to me this time, and I sort of remember kind of holding a candle for, is the whole sort of poignant fast forward life that Donna lives in the computer, and the fact that there's this sort of thing, that the way that it proceeds by dream logic, I thought of being outside and I was outside. I thought of going down to the river and I was down by the river. That is super creepy.
Yes,
I think, and kind of as you get older, and part of what we're doing here is rewatching Doctor Who at older ages, as one tends to, and seeing different things, and life sort of starts to seem like that, right? Life does start to feel a bit fast forward, and like we could just sort of, the days just become a few scenes. You think about going to bed and then suddenly you're in your pajamas.
Even sort of the repetition of certain things, like when all the kids are the same, which again is another scary reveal. And
again, another Moffat-y element that sort of squeezed in there.
And it's like he really puts in lots of those clues. The world isn't real. You're in the Matrix creepiness, and it all really works. I mean, it's almost like one of those challenges. How do you make something really frightening and creepy without virtually any trope of jump scares or scary gross monsters? It's everyday stuff. It's just he writes it in a way that is makes it all terrifying.
And then in amongst this all, we realize that we've not just been watching a Doctor romance, or so it seems in retrospect, but also a Donna romance as well.
Yeah,
because of poor Lee, and because of the fact that reveal right at the end, where he is one of the people in the library. She could have been with him forever and not had her memory wiped, had she just found him and maybe settled down on whatever planet he came from.
Yeah, I got to say, that's one of the most memorable guest shots in Doctor Who, and he has so few lines. Again, this is sort of almost a show that breaks many rules and yet gets away with it and makes it even better. Like he has very few lines, but he's a very he's a good looking bloke, as Donna even says, and
he is. And the stutter really makes his character, which is odd. It's like that one detail.
Actor, I have to find his name, but he
Jason Pitts.
Jason Pitts. He rises to the challenge with his facial expressions. Like you just see that moment where they're sort of saying goodbye to each other as the reality is disappearing around them. And I got to say, like I was right. I'm right with you in that Forest of the Dead now feels like the stronger episode and it's, it's hard to judge it on its own, but because some of the emotional beats are teed up throughout the whole thing, but they really pay off. And I was actually getting pretty choked up at that moment and various others. Like, I was like, wow, like, and man, I got to say, like, this is probably, I can't wait to learn Catherine Tate. Like, wow. Like, I think this is her best performance in her whole run. I mean,
seriously,
when she's crying for Miss Evangelista, like, which apparently was padding. Like, that was like the script editing. Like the episode was too short, so Moffat wrote more lines and more interaction there when her memory echo is sort of fading. She turns it on, and you're just like, oh man, the anguish later with her kids, and then saying goodbye to the guy. And even those quieter moments, like at the very end when she's like, when Time Lords say they're all right, does that mean really not all right? Like, yes, just really everything just really is delivered perfectly. Like, I cannot say enough about that performance. Wow.
I mean, there are times when Moffat writes a character with such finesse and such, and it's sort of a background character, would be a background character in any other Doctor Who story. That you're just like, wow, this is like a masterclass. I think of Billy Shipton in Blink. Who's only in it for 5 minutes, and yet he's a fully realized character. And you miss him, and you feel sad. I get choked up every time he's old and in the hospital bed and dying. It totally works, and the same here with Lee is just you're just like, oh my god, the struggle of that guy. You instantly fill in the blanks of the struggle of his whole life with stuttering. And just not being able to get the name of Donna out, but clearly being sweet on her. And she's like, what am I going to do with you? And then the instant cuts to her in the wedding dress, by the way, same wedding dress as from the Runaway Bride.
Right. Nice
and as he takes her over the threshold of their new house and is still stuttering, but it just, you fill in all the blanks of this great romance that happened in between. And then to learn in retrospect that none of those blanks happened, that they were as blank in Donna's mind as that she was filling in the blanks herself, basically.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it just piles on the poignancy, and it all feels earned, and it's written so quickly. And then when you see him again at the end, I didn't remember that he's there again on the teleport at the end, so that extra gut punch. But it's sort of even more of an extra gut punch when you know that the fans aren't going to really be talking about this because the Doctor and River have sucked all the oxygen out of the room.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of sucking on, that's a good description because they do sort of suck the oxygen out of the room in terms of what this relationship is. But I love that the Doctor and River in their first meeting, and just honestly, I should take a step back, which is like, we're coming at this relationship now, the Doctor and River song on this rewatch, knowing the whole story now, right? Like we know, like, oh, everything that happens, even the lead up to this episode, which I think we should get into at some point, but. I came away liking her a little more, and I'm a little bit ashamed to say that, I guess, because the first time around, I feel like as a proxy for the Doctor, the audience is annoyed with her a little bit that she knows so much, and you're kind of like, why are you trying to be doctorish and assert when that's sort of the Doctor's job? And now this time I feel like, oh wow, I'm having more fun watching them be effectively rivals.
Yes.
And the oxygen out of the room analogy is good because it's like the Doctor's usually the one to do that, and this other person's now in his space of like, lady, I'm the one who's supposed to be telling everyone what to do, and it's not quite as overt, but that's the effect here. So
and they pull out screwdrivers at one point, which I think is a perfect analogy for all of that.
And you really kind of almost get the impression she's just, oh, this is so cute when he does this. Like you kind of like, go ahead, let him lead us. It's going to be great.
they really lean into that later in Alex Kingston's tenure, right? The moments where she has the drop on the Doctor in terms of knowing everything that's happened, the glee in her face when she says spoilers. Yeah, it's sort of the kindling of it is just beginning here. But let's just pause and say, wow. I would like to stand up and give a standing ovation in my mind for Steven Moffat for basically planning. I mean, I know it wasn't planned, and we didn't know if Alex Kingston would ever appear in Doctor Who again. Even he didn't know if he was going to ever get to continue the story of River Song. But he got the opportunity. He did it. He saw it through. There are, I've counted them, 10 or 11 episodes where River Song appears, you know, and they tell a full story. And the one moment in Forest of the Dead where I got chills was where she's about to die, and she says, "The last time I saw you, you showed up with a new suit and a new haircut." Right. And we had one wonderful, glorious last night with the Singing Towers of Beryllium, and I didn't realize now you were saying goodbye. And for that to actually be realized, you know, 2 doctors later, it is extraordinary. I mean, what an achievement, even if partly accidental, but what an achievement. And you've got to think, well, I think, first of all, we should say that Kate Winslet was the first choice for the role of River Song. Kate Winslet is kind of busy. Yeah, she couldn't. Yeah, she's in a lot of movies and stuff, and you think that it's a kind of good thing that she didn't make it this once, because I don't see Kate Winslet appearing again and again in this way to finish the story, and it would have just been sort of this embarrassing appendix that it was never finished in the history of Doctor Who. But every element that she says, it so looks like pre-planning now, right? She talks about the crash of Byzantium.
That's and the whole Flesh and Stone, and what's the other one?
Time of the Angels?
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, it's the next season. It's the first season of Matt Smith.
Yeah, and it's interesting, a side note, that I'm always plotting out in my mind the best episodes to make a beginner watch to hook them into Doctor Who immediately. And I still think Blink is a great place to start, because one of the strongest stories in Doctor Who. It's Dr. Light, and it's a great standalone. But now I'm thinking, then go to Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead, then go to 11th Hour, and then Time of Angels, because then you would have the collision of the two things that would produce a hook in the beginner's mind: the Weeping Angels and River Song.
That's not bad. That's your crash course. Right?
Yeah, and then they're hooked. Right, those first episodes are free, and then you charge them. So the rest.
There's a lot here that implies that River is the Doctor's wife.
Yes.
In the future, there's so many things. Everything from
but less than you'd think. The handcuffs. I mean, that just implies that they've had a relationship of some sort, or maybe that Moffat's being a bit. You could get away with it because we forget, and it's kind of clearer on a rewatch. We forget that it was not said explicitly, and there were other possible interpretations. Right.
Sure.
Of who she was.
And I was actually listening to the commentary, and Moffat, Tennant, and is it Julie Gardner, I think, is one of the producers, were chatting about it. By the way, Julie, awesome at getting stuff out of the other two. I'll say that. She was like, I mean, I'll give her my private journalist license, because she was a great interviewer, essentially.
RTD credits her with persuading him to do it in the first place, so there would be no NuWho without Julie Gardner.
Oh, nice.
All respect.
Good tidbit. But she and those guys, basically, like when David Tennant was, because he wasn't told, right? Like he just had the script to go on, and certainly Moffat even says in the commentary, because he recorded it at the time, and he says, "I know who she is, but I can't reveal it." Obviously, ended up revealing it, as we just talked about. But the Tennant thought she was actually a future Doctor.
Yes.
And
well, at least I think he knew that's probably not what it was, but it was what he used as a placeholder in his mind to act against.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And it does work, because he's got to act against her pulling out the diary that is the TARDIS binding on the diary, the sonic screwdriver. These are things that he actually has to react to. So it does make a lot of sense for those purposes.
You almost think he's saving himself at the end there. His own memory, but it's like he thinks about, I guess, what he would do, and putting the little memory thing in the screwdriver. And in my mind, as he did that, like I feel like, oh, not only is it one of those memory things, it's probably enhanced with better technology, because it's Time Lord technology, and maybe he could get a more complete version of that person. So in my mind, like River Song is there in the library to be taken out whenever they want. You know what I mean? Like, so if they wanted to, they could maybe, I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, anyone could write that. But I also do feel like the finality of it is, you kind of maybe mess with that story a little too much in terms of, not this story, but the story of the Doctor and River and this being.
Yeah,
is her first appearance by his perspective is her last appearance.
We've had just the right amount of River endings or apparent River endings now. Right. I think you don't want to bring her back at this stage because Name of the Doctor was kind of an ending. Mm-hmm. It was kind of her last hurrah with Matt Smith, you know, and she kind of appears as a invisible presence in that. And then Weddings of River Song is the true ending, right? That really, you can't top that. It's got the singing towers. It's got the reveal of the last night being 24 years, such a beautiful way.
Okay,
it's got Noddle, yes.
Listen, this is a good time to nitpick for a second. So, again,
we love to nitpick.
With all the throat clearing we've just done, hats off to Steven Moffat for coming up with this, seeing it through, and doing so much great stuff with it. All that said, why does she not, like, given what happened in the Weddings of River Song, why does she not know that this is probably her end? You know, like, especially if it's her first encounter, like he doesn't know her. You know, it's almost like she should know right then and there, like, oh man, like what happens to me? Even if she didn't know already, because I have to rewatch Weddings of River Song. It's been a while, but I feel
what
like
are you thinking of there?
They go in, like, once she does the Towers of Delirium, she knows. Is she sad because she thinks she's going to die or never see him again? Like, I feel like because of what happened later, she should earlier on in this story kind of know she's going to die.
We're talking about the Husbands of River Song. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Husbands, not Wedding. Yeah. Sorry, I got confused.
Husbands I have seen more recently. No, I talked about this with my wife, who has watched them all a lot, and she says no, he doesn't. In Husbands of River Song, he doesn't reveal anything about the Singing Towers of Delirium. It's just in his head, and he's just sad, and it actually fulfills what she says about the new haircut and the suit and everything.
But I mean, does she? Maybe I read too much into it then, because like I was probably bringing what I knew about this episode, but she seems very sad, and I guess it's because she realizes, is it the last time she's going to see him? Like, I don't know. I have to watch it again. So anyway, maybe that is covered, and maybe it's a stretch. The other thing, though, is that this apparently is the only time, at least on screen, and we can get into some Big Finish stuff, I guess, but the only time River Song encounters the 10th Doctor.
Yes. And outside of other stories, yeah.
So then why is she confused about how little he knows? You know, like, I feel like it's like, oh wait, she should know it's someone she's never seen before. And are we that, or have we done the Byzantium Tower or whatever? And she should know that. Like, well, wait a minute.
Have we done the crash of the Byzantium yet? Yes, she should know that.
Yeah.
Just weird.
Maybe her memory isn't so good at this point, right? You know, like, because she's had a lot of adventures with them, so maybe she's sort of lost track of, wait, which Doctor is this? Is this between Matt and someone else? Like, maybe she thinks he's a later incarnation from Matt.
Yeah, well, we don't have to rely on Big Finish for River having at least seen all the other Doctors, because we know from the Husbands of River Song she has that wallet with all of his faces in it, up until Peter Capaldi. So Peter Capaldi, she certainly doesn't know until that one meeting. So maybe it is the same with Tennant, or maybe she's seen pictures of Tennant. I don't know. I mean, obviously in the real world, this happened because Moffat was thinking, in the unlikely event that I get to finish the River Song story, let's just assume that it's David Tennant's Doctor, because we have that line where she's like, you look so young, or your eyes look so young. I forget exactly what she says. But clearly that only works if she sees Tennant's Doctor again. And I remember kind of feeling that when we start to see her in Matt Smith's run. First of all, there's that sort of visceral thing of like, aren't you guys? There's a bit of an age gap between you guys, isn't that? Aren't you cradle robbing there, River? So that makes it especially weird that she kind of sees the Tennant Doctor as younger than the Matt Smith Doctor, but maybe this is a reason the randomizer brought us here, because we just looked in closing time at we just talked about how old Matt Smith's eyes are.
Exactly.
The sort of sense of age that he brings to that. So maybe in a way Matt Smith does look older than David Tennant.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of stretch it into that zone for it to make sense. And I don't like relying on Big Finish either. And honestly, I haven't listened to it, so I don't really know what happens, but maybe they've explained away how she could, I don't know if she's encountered earlier doctors or whatever, but obviously
she does,
unless there's like memory wipes, and maybe there is, like, why would Tennant not know who she is at all if that happens? I don't know. It's all timey-wimey. Again, I like all these adventures. I want them to happen regardless. I'm not trying to nix anything. I'm just like, you can do it. You just got to explain it, and I'm so willing to go with you. And this is actually, I will say, the commentary is worth listening to, because, and it's relevant to what you were saying about Davies and Moffat and their relationship. I feel like Davies kept Moffat honest, because Moffat gives Davies credit in the commentary for those lines of dialogue that, if I'm contradicting something from eons ago, I got to at least put a line in.
Yeah.
And Davies was amazing at that. And Moffat less so, as
increasingly less so.
But this is obviously a Moffat story in the Davies era. And so I think to your point about Moffat and where he ended up going with Doctor Who, I think at this time he's probably, I wouldn't say less ambitious, but he's very more grounded, I think, and sort of going from a little more from Davies' playbook, and you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. So if you look at all of Moffat's stuff during Davies' tenure, Blink, The Empty Child, Dr. Dance's, this adventure, they're all just really tightly plotted stories, and they have a lot of respect for sort of the rest of Doctor Who. And they're such great just Doctor Who stories. That's one of the great things about this one. I mean, I feel like it is just so Doctor Who. I mean, there's a mystery. There's this big sci-fi concept of a planetary library, which isn't just interesting for its scale. I loved the Doctor's line, people never stop loving books, which is just so reassuring, I think, to everybody. I mean, I don't know
the smell of books. He talks about the smell. You need the smell.
I mean, you don't I really don't think there's that many people on Earth who are like, I want to see everything in a Kindle forever. Kindles are good. I own a Kindle. They're fine. But people just love books. And it's like, yes, this feels right. This feels like a thing that would happen thousands of years from now, that you would have a planetary library. That just seemed very real. I'm sure
if you've got a lot of planets kicking around, why not make one an entire library?
Yeah. And so it's got all this stuff. It's got great Moffat dialogue. The monster, we'll talk about that in a bit, but a good monster that takes, the Doctor Who thing of the everyday object or thing in your life that's suddenly homicidal. So shadows can kill you now. And it's sometimes that doesn't work so well, but sometimes it does. I mean, this is one of the cases where I think it really works. Even if there are some issues with it. So I mean, like I say, it's just a very good, he really gets Doctor Who, and he's really passionate about the things he's creating for it. And for whatever, issues I might have with Moffat and what he did when he was showrunner, I have mad respect for him as a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah,
who can craft amazing stories.
I think you're absolutely right that it is the connection between the two of them that produces great Doctor Who, because whenever they did it together, they knocked it out of the park. Right? Am I misremembering anything? Was there any? There was no bad Moffat episode in the Davies era.
Not that I mean.
No,
I'd have to look it up. Happen. The Girl in the Fireplace. There's another one.
Yeah,
the
two of them created magic together. It's Beatles-esque, the John and Paul.
Well, we know what we're doing now. We're starting the campaign. I mean, Davies hasn't even started his new run yet. I mean,
the two of them would just be unstoppable Oh my goodness. And then, we can start the wish list for who they would choose as their joint doctor. But my God, we'd be entering the Sergeant Pepper's era of Doctor Who if that ever happened. So yeah, come on guys, get it together for the good of human culture and history. You need to do this.
Yeah. So I mean, certainly Moffat is super strong when he does these two-parters. He has enough room to stretch out. He has enough time to put in that Davies-esque stuff to make things. He doesn't just hand wave. It's almost like I've got too much time. I can't just hand wave. I've got to use this time.
Well, one thing we're about here in Pull to Open, I just want to close the loop on any concerns with River's timeline, the timey-wiminess of it, remembering the Doctor forgetting her, which is just remember that she's part Time Lord. She's a little Time Lord-esque, having been born in the TARDIS. We know this from season 6. So the timey-wiminess of that factor, which we've never seen anywhere else in Doctor Who, can explain almost anything.
Right. So like,
the TARDIS is on her side. The TARDIS is making the Doctor forget previous times he's met her. The TARDIS likes her, knows that the Doctor needs reining in. Kind of almost gives her blessing as the Doctor's true wife to be the Doctor's in-person wife. The fact that River knows to fly the TARDIS better than the Doctor, doesn't leave the handbrake on. We know this fact. I love that line, by the way. Still one of my favorite all-time lines of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So that explains anything away. She's buds with the TARDIS. She's part TARDIS. That explains memory wipes. It explains, whatever you need to explain away. Just bring in the TARDIS.
I really liked was the callback with the square gun that lets them get away from the Vashta Nerada once or twice, put carving squares and things.
The squareness gun. Yeah,
I always sort of thought of it as a callback. It's actually, according to Moffat, the actual gun, right? Because this was Jack Harkness's gun from way back in his other adventure, the Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, and it was a clever kind of almost piece of geometry that they threw. Like it's a distinctive, memorable thing. But in Moffat's mind, of course, Jack becomes a companion. Where does that gun end up? It ends up in the TARDIS. At some point, River, who's traveled in the TARDIS plenty, picks up the gun and takes it with her in her career in archaeology. Comes in handy, and apparently came in handy here. So it is the exact same gun that Jack had, which that's really cool.
I love the squareness gun, and I would like to see more of it. I would like to see it return again. We need more squareness.
So there is kind of like almost a bit of a nitpick I could go at on the Doctor's sonic screwdriver doing it for a second, where it is in like the two Vashta Nerada are coming at him, and he uses his screwdriver to square out the hatch under him, which is a cool little escape. But it's like, if the screwdriver can do that, why does it only do it now? Right? Like, he's never done that before. So maybe because it's around the squareness gun, we got to explain this away somehow.
That is a scene with a lot of nitpicks in it. The other one being that Dave is eaten by the Vashta Nerada, and we don't even see why. We don't even see him with an extra shadow. But suddenly the Doctor is surrounded by Vashta Nerada astronaut suits.
Right. I mean, I think you just
it's kind of cheating a bit to just kind of have the other guy killed in the background.
Yeah, it doesn't even get the two shadows for a minute or any sort of foreshadowing there. I mean, that one's easy to explain because it's just like, well, maybe there was a higher concentration of them there and they felt more confident about hunting quicker. But I feel us backsliding into a bit of an analysis on the Vashta Nerada, where, again, I high praise for the concept, and it's well done, I would say 80. Well, I'd say it's about 80 to 90% there. The thing that doesn't make sense to me is that they have literally no defense against these things. Like they're pretty much at their mercy. They're
invisible piranhas who particularly like chicken.
Yeah, and apparently they didn't also need the extra line of their shadows, but they're also the dust in the sunbeam. Like they're kind of both, which is like, well, okay. Like you didn't need that extra thing, but
just trying to make kids scared of dust in sunbeams as well as everything else, because that is a thing that you notice as a kid. But yeah, Moffat does sometimes try to pack too much. He does this in Blink as well. Like the one bad note in Blink is that he kind of extends it to the notion that all statues might be weeping angels.
Oh yeah,
and you can tell you're like, just come on, you're just trying to layer on the fear for small kids who you've already scared witless. Like, don't just include an extra mundane thing to terrify the life out of us.
Yeah, totally. But here, I guess it's like it just at some point you think, why don't the Vashta Nerada just attack? Because they can't do anything against them. Like there should have been something in the script where whatever it is, they can do something very minor physically to slow them down or confuse them or something, so that they can't just, because otherwise they're just kind of there and they have to run from them and they have to run from them and they can stand there for minutes and minutes with them in the room and for whatever reason be allowed to do that. It's just a little too convenient for me. It doesn't ruin the story. If they had done that, shown some way they were slowing them down, I think this story would have been virtually perfect.
The Vashta Nerada is a great idea for a monster, and having them in shadows cast by other creatures makes sense. I think that's maybe how you fix it a little bit, because then it becomes even creepier when you see the extra shadows. The problem with putting them in the library, by the way, it wasn't always given. There was an early version of this where Moffat was thinking of putting the Weeping Angels in the library before he wrote Blink.
Right.
But if you're going to put them in the library, a library is just a place where you just inevitably have shadows everywhere all the time, right? So in all of these scenes, there are shadows of the book stacks, and there's a lot of time where characters are standing in those shadows,
right?
And you're like, well, hang on a minute. Let's get the rules of this clear. It's kind of like if the floor is lava, then you can't stand on the floor at all. If shadows are the Vashta Nerada, or potentially the Vashta Nerada, don't stand in any shadows.
Right, you got to be in the light all the time. Yeah, it's a problem.
All the time. And again, this sort of it's kid game logic as it is sort of kid fear logic that we're talking about here. Monsters in the shadows, monsters in the moats and the sunbeams. But yeah, kid games have very, very clear rules. So clean that up, Moffat. That said, the Vashta Nerada are just really, they're kind of an all-time favorite, even though only appearing in one episode. They're one that you remember. Everyone remembers the name. And we should give a shout out here to the former band known as Chameleon Circuit from the 2010s, who had a song called Count the Shadows that I've recently been listening to again, and it's quite an earworm. It's a song that gives a shout out. Exactly.
Or you might be listening to this podcast.
Check it out after this, but not before leaving us a review with a scarf.
Indeed. How did you like the bit where Miss Evangelista is eaten and they come in and they sort of don't seem to know that the skeleton is her? And
yeah, that's weird.
I found that weird. I found that like, why are you assuming there was a skeleton here?
I mean, it's pretty instantly overwritten by the fact that is such an emotionally wrenching scene. That Miss Evangelista is kind of confessing her innermost thoughts and worries about being seen as dumb and all of this to Donna, who she's had one connecting conversation with, and that was apparently enough to make her the nice lady. And it just so my wife was watching this with me again, and she cried at 2 points, one in each episode. And the second one we've been through it is Lee. It's just so wrenching for the reasons we've already discussed. But the other one was Miss Evangelista, because that is such a scene that speaks to, I think, all of our fears of like how we're viewed behind our back, and our fears of not being good enough, smart enough, whatever it is we're afraid of, disapproval from the group.
Well, and also you were also on the other side of that too, because we've all had times where we were thinking unkind things, or perhaps even acting unkind to people who are really trying their best, and it makes you feel a little bit of shame as well. Like you kind of think like, oh, I that's not okay, and they shouldn't. Do that.
And it's set up because you are set up earlier in the episode to think that Miss Evangelista's a ditz, and she's just this gopher, this drone for the big boss, and everyone else is laughing about how she accidentally went into the escape pod on the way there because she thought it was the bathroom. Is that right? And you're like, oh, and the first time you see that, you're like, oh, what a ditz. And then the second time you're like, oh, well, hang on, she's just She's just klutzy. It's not her fault. Yeah. She's just kind of, perhaps not constructed the same way as you or I. She's maybe a little, today you might call it neurodivergent. But, that's not bad. She's still a human being. She still has these fears and so that's such a great moment for developing empathy, I think. And certainly it's a great thing to show to kids to make them think twice about that sort of mean behavior.
And luckily she kind of has a happy ending similar to Rivers. Though she has a transitional period as a weirdly deformed face.
Do you think that CGI held up where she's revealed as the woman under the veil?
I do think it does. Honestly, like it does and it doesn't. It didn't even back in, when was this broadcast? 2009, 2008? I don't think it held up as an effect either now or then. I do think it holds up as a purposefully bad effect that is unnerving, that's weird, and gets across the idea that this is the Matrix and there's a glitch in the Matrix. Something's wrong here. So I also like, it's one of those sort of Chekhov's gun type things that is revealed pretty early. Like if she's some weird, mysterious person with a veil, you got to see what's under there at some point. So I'm glad they didn't make us wait too long because it's, it's not the most satisfying thing.
And you're right, because it is in a computer, it kind of excuses bad CGI. It's just that, Cal is trying to save space in the memory, especially for all these people. That's why she's also replicating the kids, which is another spooky scene. And that's what helps the Miss Evangelista reveal, right? It's that whole scene with you suddenly realize that all the kids in the playground are repeating as a way to save space. That's a super creepy thing.
Yeah, it all really works. And I also sort of but like it makes sense that the time is skipping and because again, it's space, right? You can't give the whole experience, but you can give a simulation and at least keep people sort of docile while they figure out how to save everybody on the surface or whatever the computer thought it was waiting for, which Dr. Moon had to tell it to.
Indeed. Cal may be just a little bit of a step too far. I don't know. I guess it resolves the whole.
I completely forgot about it this time. In that, Cal, and then it's just her initials.
I mean, it does serve to make Mr. Lux a nice guy after all, so that everyone in this ends up being, not only is everyone living, not only is everyone saved, but also even the bad guy turns out to be really nice under it all because he's concerned about Cal.
Well, that's the thing you could probably get rid of in terms of things you could get rid of, and it's pretty much the same thing. Like it's probably one mystery too far because there's so many mysteries in this of like what happened to the people, who's this girl, what's the monster, et cetera, all of these things, and then the Cal thing is just on top of it, and it's like it comes together, it's a thing, but it's like it's kind of unnecessary.
I think the only reason it works is the number of times you see the word Cal crop up in scenes, including some that are very Easter eggy, and you have to sort of pause just to see it written in a few scenes. But that's the only reason why we remember that Cal is a thing, that Cal is a mystery that we're supposed to solve.
How did you like the my doctor can open the TARDIS with a snap of his fingers, and then at the end of the episode, he just does it? Did that sit well with you?
Do you know what that reminded me of? The very existence of Mel. Mel in Trial of a Time Lord.
Okay.
The Doctor ends up leaving Trial of a Time Lord with Mel in the TARDIS, having not met her yet.
Yes, that's correct.
And it's sort of, that didn't sit well with me as a kid watching Trial of a Time Lord. And it all, that's where my brain went, I think in 2008, as now, of like, oh, this is another Mel moment, right? It's
Mel moment. Wow. A new segment on Pull to Open, everyone. We're identifying the Mel moment.
The Mel moment where the Doctor suddenly has skipped ahead in time somehow to have an extra companion or have an extra capability of its TARDIS.
Well, the Mel thing, I know that's been explained. I mean, it's all retcon. That was not part of the series, but there's actually, it's really great. It's a couple of paragraphs in the discontinuity guide where it was like a brief history of Mel, because presumably the Sixth Doctor takes this Mel, maybe goes adventuring with her, but then drops her off, and then the earlier version of the Sixth Doctor picks her up. Yeah. And she already knows a lot about it. I mean, it just becomes this thing. I mean, you could write it a few different ways, but it's timey-wimey inadvertently.
Yes.
Like,
and I think that was the problem, is I was expecting it to be in Trial of Time Lord, and that would have made such a good payoff at the end. But they just didn't. They just skipped right over it. And it seemed to be lazy writing even then.
Yeah, so in this case, it didn't quite sit well with me. It's two hand. This is the big hand. If there is a hand wave in this, it's this, which is that. Well, why would it suddenly do that unless there's some sort of magic involved? Like, I mean, you could write something, but I feel like what I got from River is that that's a thing he builds into the TARDIS at some point. Like he like you got to actually do something for that to work. I mean,
maybe this is
as a guy who has installed tons of smart home stuff in my house. I would love to just think, wow, I'd love my front door to open when I snap my fingers, and just to happen when I get there. No, I've actually got to install a thing, and you can do it. You just got to install some things.
Let's have a post-credit scene where David Tennant is trying to work Alexa in the TARDIS to try to make this a thing retroactively. But I refer you to my previous spoiler coverage or plot hole coverage of River was born in the TARDIS.
Okay.
The TARDIS is all time at once. Experience is all time at once. So if River's born there and River sets this up later, then presumably it works. It's always worked. And the Doctor could have, from the very beginning, clicked his fingers to open his Type 40 TARDIS, which I would love, actually, a post-credit scene where the Doctor realizes that. He's like, hang on, River set this up somehow. I could have always done it. It's confirmed in some way. I've been carrying around a key for years. I could have done this all along.
It kind of neuters thinking about Clara's threat in the
Dark Water, Death and Heaven.
Water, that's it, yeah. Where
she throws away all the keys.
I just gotta snap.
Did they deal with that, or is that another case of Moffat forgetting to throw in a sentence?
It's another case of Moffat forgetting to throw in a sentence. Yes, I mean, you can't be expected to remember everything, but I do like the idea of River installing a thing. And it's retroactive because that's just how the TARDIS works. It's like, boom. Now it always was there.
Instantly. Yeah,
I can go back and tell him, and boom.
Maybe she just sort of. I also like the idea that maybe she retroactively inserted a handbrake into the TARDIS that the Doctor always had on, just to mess with him.
Ooh,
it's never actually a handbrake all these years. Yeah,
I felt like that was a bit. We'll get to that episode at some point, but I do feel like that was her kind of like speaking baby, if you know what I mean. Like, it's maybe that's true, maybe it's not.
Yes,
just saying things.
I like it. Well, speaking of retroactive insertions, it's time for our regular segment, which is very exciting this week. What happened to the Clara Splinter? Where is the Clara Splinter in this story? And the fact is that the Clara Splinter is in this story.
Okay.
It is that is canon. If you watch The Name of the Doctor, as I just rewatched the scene this morning, just to make sure of this. Well, as a journalist, you got to chase this stuff down.
You were kidding about that rewatch frequency. Anyway, go on.
Exactly, and I do it sort of 5 minutes at a time. And here it was rewatching the end of of Name of the Doctor. You see her in one of those scenes where she's splintered and sent throughout time, looking at David Tennant from behind in a scene that is clearly supposed to be, the location is clearly supposed to be the library. He's out on the balcony looking at the whole planet. I seem to make this work within the episode. Donna has to be off screen to his side. But he's just sort of gazing out in one of those scenes that he does, looking at the whole library. And we pull back and we see Clara was behind him, behind a window the whole time.
But what was she doing?
We don't know.
How did he save the episode?
Just like everything in the Doctor Splinter stuff that appears, the Clara Splinter stuff that appears in Name of the Doctor, like none of it she actually seems to be saving the Doctor. She's just looking at him and screaming, "Doctor!" It's like sometimes he listens to me, sometimes he doesn't.
Well, there's one point where I think things were a little convenient for them, which is that they realize they got to go to the core of the planet to actually reboot the computer or save the computer. And they just have that anti-grav platform just sort of is right there. So I feel like whatever Clara did was like had to do with either making sure that platform was active, making sure they got back there specifically. So maybe when they were running around from the Vashta Nerada, she was pushing some bookshelves to make sure they ended up in that specific place. That's kind of where I'm going, because they absolutely needed to have a place where they could go all the way down to the core. And how would that even happen? Maybe there's just a million of them, but I don't know. But the whole place was failing, and this was the one platform that still worked.
I love it, because a lot of having rewatched Name of the Doctor and those particular scenes, a lot of what Clara does seems to be involving going vertically up or down, or falling, or trying to prevent the Doctor from falling. So this is very much in line, like vertical people mover. Yeah.
Well, I also feel like this is in one of those cases where I want to see the mini Clara adventure, because it's like she to evade the Vashta Nerada herself was probably honestly the splinter probably got eaten. That would be kind of a neat little end where she has to do this. She's got to evade the shadows, but to sacrifice herself, she had to go where a bunch of them are, and then push a bookshelf, and that at the very end of it, she's just consumed.
Yeah.
Poor Clara,
and maybe she also retroactively adds that ability to create a door below the Sonic.
Right. Well, there you go.
The Doctor.
That's not bad. Or maybe he didn't do it, and she just kind of carved it. She's there with a saw.
It's like, Doctor.
Earlier.
Jeez.
That was a very Wile E. Coyote moment, by the way. I was like,
it really is. I was thinking of Daffy Duck, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It has that cartoonish feel to it.
Yeah.
Wow. So we've dealt with the Clara Splinter.
We did.
This is great. We're having a very efficient discussion of this entire show, which I love. What else do we have?
What if
the evil plot
had succeeded? What is the evil plot here?
Well, yeah, there is no evil plot other than if you call the Vashta Nerada evil, and how could you? They're just little piranhas. They're not evil. They're just doing what nature intended.
They're just hungry. They're monsters.
Is there any other evil in this episode? There isn't.
Not really.
I don't think so.
Dr. Moon's good too. Everyone's just trying to save the people.
He's a little bit gaslighty. But maybe we're asking.
Even the Lux guy is actually not evil. And so if his plot succeeds, they just get to this end sooner. I think you kind of have to go with the Vashta Nerada. And what if they don't surrender? Because I did feel like in that moment, it's a very Moffat-y moment, and it might even be the first of these Moffat-y moments where the Doctor, gets his chest out and gets very, I am the Doctor, look me up.
Look me up. I love it.
It was cool, but it's one of those moments where he's going purely on reputation, whether he's yelling at a spacecraft or these shadows or whatever.
You're right. That's such a Moffat-y thing that the Doctor basically does a lot of "Don't you know who I am?"
Yeah,
which is
and so
something we have to do sometimes as journalists. So it's kind of obnoxious when you have to do it.
The Doctor definitely got more obnoxious doing it. And I will again, I got to give Moffat credit. He got pretty self-aware about it, because I really liked one of the lines at the end of series 6 where Matt Smith is like, I got too big. I got too big for my reputation. I've got to pull it back. I got to go back to lower stakes. So he was very self-aware about it. But in this case, he says it. What if they're like, yeah, we don't care? What does he do? He says, I'm going to do something to you. Well, why not? If you're just a skeleton dude, bye-bye.
Yeah. Also, what if they didn't have? I mean, how do they look him up? How do shadow piranhas use a Wikipedia?
Yeah, I mean, there you really have to stretch it, because then I guess it's the little thingy in their suit that I guess has some Wi-Fi, and they're just like, oh, okay. I guess it's mentioned here and there.
Google the Doctor. I kind of want to insert Peter Capaldi's voice at that point saying, "Google it."
Yeah. So what if they just say, "Well, we're not impressed," and they eat him?
Yeah. Do they eat all his regenerations?
Would you even regenerate if you're just a skeleton? I mean, I feel like you need some flesh.
Maybe. I kind of like the idea that he does, if only for the fact that you could sort of have his final regeneration be Dr. Moon.
Oh, okay. So he just as the 13th, there, or what would that be?
45th. I mean,
I guess it's a timeless child. This is sort of the problem if he keeps regenerating, because it's he could theoretically go an infinite number of times.
Timeless child does introduce a lot of problems.
So maybe it gets to 45, the Vashta Nerada get bored, and then he wanders into the hard drive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he has to go off and fight some battle in the future and die in River's arms. So, but yeah, I like that as a way of bringing the 45th Doctor about, and a way of fully making Colin Salmon the Doctor. But yeah, in story terms, it's very hard to figure out what happens here. We should mention that Moffat is sort of repeating himself here with the ending of The Doctor Dances.
Yeah,
right?
He literally repeats himself.
Everybody lives. Everybody lives. And he doesn't say it this time because it's she says it. But it's... So the reason it works so well in The Doctor Dances is because it had never been done before in the history of Doctor Who, right? Wasn't that a thing that you knew for years as a Doctor Who fan, that in every story someone dies?
That's actually a really good question. I think it's probably true. And I'm surprised I haven't looked this up myself and know the answer. I'm pretty sure you're right.
I seem to remember reading that as a kid. That was kind of a thing. And then I kind of couldn't stop noticing it going forward, that in every Doctor Who episode. So that's why Dr. Dances really made a big impression on me first time I watched it. It was like, oh, he is signaling to all of Who fans that he is officially ending that streak.
Right.
And just this once, Rose, everybody lives. And it happens again. And it's kind of nice that it happens again. You kind of feel that it should happen twice, at least.
Although everybody didn't live, if you want to get technical. I mean, Dave and Proper Dave weren't saved.
Yes.
So,
But he's out. We never meet him within the scope of the story.
Technically, though, if you think those people, they're versions of themselves in the... Yeah, I guess they lived. I mean, would you say so?
You're thinking of Proper Dave? Where's Proper Dave killed? I thought he was killed on the way.
Well, I mean, but they're all the people who are killed by the Vashta Nerada are downloaded.
Yeah.
So, would you say that counts? Are they? Is that everybody living?
Are they alive? Yeah, I mean, they're sort of for the everybody lives ending. Then yes, you have to assume that they're alive, because Cal is alive. Even though, and can I just insert here that Cal is? It's a little bit weird that he left her with every book ever written to pass the time, and she's just watching TV. I mean, come on, Cal, get with your education. Maybe that's why her quote unquote dad is there. It's to try to encourage her to stop watching the damn TV and read every book ever written.
Oh yeah, then she could shut him off. That was so bad.
Yeah, that was. I do wonder, by the way, how many kids kind of pointed a remote at their parents at that point, or after watching that episode. You press the button. Look,
I will say
it's okay.
The one thing that really it doesn't quite date the episode, but locks it at a point in time is there's a point where the room around the little girl is going crazy when the Doctor's trying to sort of wake the computer up from sleep. And one of the things is a little robot dinosaur that's I believe it's a WowWee Roboraptor, which was or similar, same company, same line, but it was one of those popular things at the time.
Wow, deep cut.
I know. Well, I was a tech editor for a long time. I had one of those things, and it just sort of really makes it. Oh, okay. This is mid-2000s. Got it.
Yep. You're located in space and time there. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's wow. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to think about. Maybe this is a mark of a great Doctor Who episode, great Doctor Who story, that it does make you question, well, are these people truly alive in the computer? But yeah, certainly one of the Daves shows up. By the way, I have a friend in New York called Not That Dave, and the reason he's called Not That Dave is because so many other people called Dave, and met one guy at a bar who was convinced that he was that Dave, and he had to keep saying, "No, I'm not that Dave." So that's what Proper Dave always makes me think of.
Dave is such a generic, and in fact, when I was in college, we had cartoons in our newspaper. I actually did one of them, but there was another cartoon. and someone had characters, and one of them was generic Dave. That was literally the character's name. And I was inspired to do that to make my generic sidekick guy in my cartoon named Dave. So Dave was like,
Dave will never die as the sidekick. He's always there.
It is.
He got that one movie where he got to be president, but other than that, he's always the sidekick.
It's timeless. I bet if you look in the top names for boys born this year, the Dave's in the top 5 probably every year, if not the top 10.
Indeed. So yeah, I think they're all alive. To close the loop on that.
I like it.
As alive as anyone uploaded to a computer ever is. But it's sort of a sci-fi convention that they are. They are in Black Mirror.
Totally. There is one last moment that I remembered I want to just mention because it reminded me of something that we had talked about previously, because it's actually very early in the first episode where the Doctor and Donna, they've really gotten the signal something's wrong here. There's danger. They haven't seen the shadows yet, but it's like people are missing. There's something wrong. And very deliberately, I feel like the TARDIS is in the background. And they can just go, and they don't. And I don't know about you. I like that. That's the thing I like. Like, it's like, this is our job. Okay. Like, I mean, it's not a job, but this is our job. Like we run into danger. And I like, this is the hero moment in a certain way for me, where it's like, we don't just run away and go on vacation. That's not what we do. We help people, and someone needs help here, and we're going to run into the danger.
Indeed. Cut to next episode where they go on vacation.
Right. Anyway, it's a very Doctor Who moment for me. Like I said, Steven Moffat really, I mean, he cracked all the eggs and made a beautiful omelet, Doctor Who omelet here. It's got everything you want in a Doctor Who adventure. And
I know, and it is the mark of a good adventure, because I don't know if you were referencing this, because I've discussed it on the podcast before, that I don't like the moments where the Doctor doesn't just go back to the TARDIS. But I didn't even notice it this time. There was so much going on, and I totally bought that. In this case, yes, the Doctor would be sucked in enough to the mystery, and there are enough lives at stake. There are 4,000 lives in the balance. The stakes are made very clear here right from the start. So yeah, I totally buy it. They wouldn't go back to the TARDIS this time.
Cool.
Or maybe Clara distracted them.
Oh yeah, maybe Clara turned up the perception filter somehow.
Yep.
Right,
I do wonder that sometimes, whether the perception filter works on the Doctor himself, and that's why he doesn't go back to the TARDIS a lot.
Oh,
he's
wow,
like,
how did I get here
why
again?
Yeah.
Whatever. Let's just fight the bad guy.
It's the Time Lord equivalent of "Dude, where's my car?" The perception filter is on your car.
But yeah, it's definitely one of the all-time greats. $3 Supremes for me. Totally awesome.
Yeah, $5 plungers up, way up.
Alrighty, it's about that time now. It's time to figure out where we're going next, I believe.
Briefly, before what's going next, I realized we forgot at the start of the show. You were going to surprise me live on air by telling me whether or not you were caught up to the latest Jodie Whittaker episodes.
We both forgot. I think we're going to have to insert something at the beginning, like, hey, if you want to know if Pete's caught up, fast forward to whatever, an hour and 10, and you'll find out.
This is how we make you stick around, people, to the bitter end.
So the answer is, I am caught up.
Yay! Hey!
I've managed to watch the last episode of Flux and Eve of the Daleks in the past week, and on one of those I was a little bit drunk, and it was the wrong thing to be drunk with, I will tell you. That last episode of Flux,
Eve of the Daleks. Episode of Flux.
See, the thing is, I feel like Eve of the Daleks, Chibnall is probably smart like Moffat, whereas Moffat, when he wrote the Christmas episodes, was like, you got to be loud, you got to be in their face, it can't be cerebral, it's got to be super fun, huge pacing. And I think Chibnall wrote this, if you have a hangover, and you're not doing so well, I mean, you're going to be able to enjoy it. You'll be all right. So that's why I feel like when they did Eve of the Daleks, they had the lower stakes, certainly a bit timey-wimey, but like, it was, oh, okay, I get it. And whereas Flux, holy man.
Oh, there's a lot that goes on there where they try and tie up all the loose ends. But we will get to that at some point in our random adventure.
Here's the thing. I'm very much looking forward to the rewatch when we get to Flux, because it's like stuff I missed, I'm going to catch, and I think I'm going to appreciate a lot more. And there was definitely stuff I appreciated. I thought there was definitely some of Chibnall's best work on the show. I mean, throughout the run. So like there was stuff I was riveted at. There was stuff I was confused by. There was good emotional moments. So it all works. And Dan's the man.
Dan is the man, and Eve the Daleks, I sort of kind of picked that one up a lot by saying I think it's like almost a top 10 story for me. Do you agree? We can talk about the specifics when we get to it, but you don't quite think it's up there?
No, it's not a top 10. Sorry, man, but we'll talk about it when we get there. It's could have been, and I have good theories on how. So I hope in our next segment, we might come up 299 because that is the number of Eve of the Daleks in the Pull to Open Codex, which is one part of our randomizer.
Indeed, and it is time.
It's time to activate the randomizer.
It's time to find our next destination. We've seen through the perception filter, we've walked back into our TARDIS, and we are off to our next adventure. And the randomizer comes in two parts. One part, the Codex Peter's mentioned, is all of the discrete stories in the history of Doctor Who, as we have decided to watch them as discrete stories.
Link in the show notes.
Indeed, check out our spreadsheet, guys. I know that's always a very sexy thing to say on a podcast, but I think I'm with my people when I say, my Doctor Who nerds, they will actually go and check out a spreadsheet.
Oh yes.
We love some spreadsheets. I
feel like every episode guide in the 80s was like basically a spreadsheet. That's all they ever like. It was just here's the production code, here's the title, here are the subtitles of the episodes. If it was like an early up thing,
You are a true hardcore Doctor Who fan and Pull to Open fan if you listen to this episode and realized that you need to update your Who Has Played the Doctor in any conceivable form spreadsheet.
Indeed.
And adding Mr. Salmon to that. But anyway, the other part of the randomizer, the bit that makes it go, the executor is random.org, in which we generate true randomness via atmospheric noise, atoms bouncing around the atmosphere, detected and turned into a random number, because computers are terrible at guessing at random numbers. They are great at making you think that you are living your life on fast forward or watching a TV and living with a remote, but they are not great at simulating true randomness.
Not so good.
So,
that's why all of the Doctor's most fearsome mechanical foes have organic components. It's just pure robots. Just not so good.
You need
not
that
so
randomness, as Boss the Computer in the Green Death told us. You do need that inefficient, random human element. So,
all right,
let's find out where we're going next. Pete has the Codex. I have the Executor. Let's get random.
Let's get random.
Give me a countdown.
Yep. In 3, 2, 1.
Spoilers.
173.
Oh, I think we're still in NuWho. I think we are. Oh my. It is the girl in the fireplace.
What?
Oh, wow.
Whoa. Okay. Getting a little spooked out by the randomizer. Not only did it take us from the only forest in Who to the only forest in Who, to the only other forest in Who, it has taken us from a Beatles-esque Moffat and RTD collaboration to another Moffat and RTD collaboration.
This is getting eerie, like it really is. Like, I mean, it was not only one of the ones we mentioned earlier, but it's the one I nearly forgot about and decided, that was another one. Boom. And it was like, wow. Like it's like, it's the
almost forget about Girl in the Fireplace, would you? Well, that's where we're going next.
Exactly. Wow. Well, this is going to be yet another fine episode. I hope we don't burn out too many NuWho classics here in season 3 of Pull to Open. We got many seasons to go, but we'll go wherever the randomizer. We trust fully, like it knows what it's doing. Clearly,
the randomizer has spoken. We trust the randomizer, which almost sounds like we're brainwashed Who characters ourselves. All hail the randomizer.
Yeah.
Cut to 2,000 years later, where we are actually worshipping the randomizer.
I got to get
as a god.
Some kind of sweatshirt with a 6-sided die as the icon, and
the phrase "trust the randomizer."
Trust the randomizer. Someone make that for us.
Well, or maybe it is time, Pete, to start selling pull to open merch.
I think it's long past, Chris. Long past. Well, guys, this has been fantastic. Thank you for going on to this journey through yet another forest with us. Thank you for listening to Pull to Open, the podcast. It's a podcast. Hey, if you haven't yet subscribed, please do. Please tell your friends and family to subscribe. Certainly any Doctor Who fans or even casual fans.
And your enemies. Tell your enemies.
Right. Tell your enemies to subscribe. And all of you, every single one of them, we'd love it if you would just leave us a review. Again, they really, really help get the visibility of the podcast out there. So whatever you're on, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever it is, please leave a rating of 5 stars, just throwing that out there. And it doesn't even have to be long. Great job, thumbs up emoji, any emoji, whatever you like.
Yeah. If you're Vashta Nerada and reviewing it, just leave us the chicken leg emoji.
The chicken leg, perfect. Oh man, love it. So please do that. Follow us on social. We're super active on TikTok at Pull2Open. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Pull2Open63. So drop us a line there. Please give us a follow, and we will see you next time for more fun with the Moffat Davies team on Girl in the Fireplace.
See you in the fireplace, everyone.
Okay, take care.